You are listening to WXOJLP Northampton, 103.3 FM, your Valley Free radio station, and this is A Baha'i Perspective. A Baha'i Perspective is a radio program that presents a perspective on life guided by the principles of the Baha'i Faith. If you want specific information about the Baha'i Faith, you can go to the website www.baha'i.org, that's BAHAI.org, or you can call the toll-free number 1-800-22-UNITE. Today you'll hear an interview with Dr. Juan Caban, a Baha'i who lives in Amherst, Massachusetts. He's the retired Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at UMass. I began our interview by asking Juan where he grew up and what was it like growing up there.
Well, I grew up in New York City. I was born in Spanish Harlem and lived there for, I guess, about 14 years. Mm-hmm. And then we moved to the Bronx, South Bronx. Mm-hmm. It was 111th Street. Uh-huh. Around First Avenue, which actually was an Italian neighborhood, but it overlapped with the Hispanic area. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And my father had a cigar store. Uh-huh. Actually, he had several, and these were actually factories, so he made cigars. Mm-hmm. And we lived there, and then we lived on 106th Street, 101st Street, 103rd Street.
So you moved often?
We moved, well, not often, but we moved. And when we lived on 103rd Street on Madison Avenue, it was behind my father's factory. Mm-hmm. His store factory was in front, and we lived in the back. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I went to public schools there.
Yeah.
Public school 103 and 72, mm-hmm. Junior high school. Uh-huh. And from there, I went. From there, we moved then to the Bronx, and. Mm-hmm. And I had applied to Brooklyn Technical High School, and I was selected. And I used to travel from the Bronx to Brooklyn Tech, which was an hour and 15 minutes each way.
Right.
On the subway. Yeah. I'm Puerto Rican. Father came in 1917, and my mother came around the 20s, and they were married in 2021. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. And the neighborhoods tend to be mixed. Where I was living in 103rd Street, there were Italian, Germans, Jewish, Catholic, and just all kinds of people, and Puerto Ricans, Cubans, and others. Yeah. Actually, when my father came to the United States, the Hispanic community in New York City total was 50,000. Currently, I think they're about 2.5 million.
Oh my gosh! So large influx.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Best friends was German. His father had been in the German Navy during the First World War, and he was in the submarines. Mm-hmm. And he actually, I learned Morse code from him in junior high school.
Junior high school. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I was a Boy Scout. Mm-hmm. I was a Boy Scout, I guess, at 12. Mm-hmm. Our Boy Scout troop met in the Russian Orthodox Church, which was on 96th Street between Madison and 5th. And that was interesting. That was my first interaction with a totally different Christian community. Mm-hmm. And that was interesting, yeah. Met in the basement, and they also had a summer camp. Mm-hmm. And they collected money for this. And it was the first time I came across a phone bank requesting money. And so I actually worked for them, for this phone bank, and used to go pick up checks in the city and bring it back to the activity they had there. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I went to summer camp. It was in Oneonta County in Garrettsville. Mm-hmm. I went twice, and it was my first experience on a farm. Uh-huh. And one of the things that they had, and the options that they had, was that you could spend a day on a farm helping out and doing that type of work. And that's the first time I pitched hay with hay loft, and we did more playing around than we did pitching any hay. But then the breakfast time was about 10 o'clock, I guess, and they called us down, and we went, and I sat down, and the first time I'd ever seen so much food in my life.
Oh, really?
They had a lazy Susan in the center, and they had all kinds of meats and things, and it was just unbelievable. And that impressed me tremendously. Little did I know that they had gotten up at 6 o'clock in the morning, had been working all that time, and so when they went to have breakfast at 10, they were hungry.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So yeah, so it was a really wonderful experience. I finally found out where milk comes from.
I guess growing up in the city, you figured it came from the store.
We had to go up by bus to Onions, and that was a long trip. So it was a good experience, and that was during the Second World War. And so they were Russians, and we learned the Russian army song. And, all that stuff.
So the Russian Orthodox Church was the sponsoring entity for the Boy Scout troop.
That's right.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so most of the Boy Scouts in the troop were Russian Orthodox?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
No, they, I have the slightest idea what the distribution of the scouts were.
Yeah.
But it never came to my attention that these were not just kids from the area. They might have been Russian Orthodox.
Yeah. They just taught you the Russian
they
marching
taught all of us.
songs or whatever.
In Second World War, everybody was gung ho for the success of Russia in the war. So
true. That's right. They were on our side.
Exactly.
Yeah. How long were you in the Boy Scouts?
I made first class. And I was got maybe about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah. And then interests went elsewhere.
Well, then I moved to the Bronx and wasn't in the area any longer. So and then I was in high school, so traveling back and forth with no time for anything else.
So what was high school like?
Well, high school was Brooklyn Tech is one of the 3 exam schools in New York City. Stuyvesant, Bronx High School of Science, Hunter, and Brooklyn Tech. And so it was interesting because I had gone through finishing junior high school, and I realized that high school was going to be a little bit rougher. And I mean from a social point of view, because there are a lot of gangs and things. And our school was pretty, little things that happened, but nothing really bad. But in the high school, it was much more organized. And so I wasn't going to go to a regular high school. I had enough difficulty with my academics, let alone going to a high school and having to deal with social issues.
Right.
So I applied, and at the time that I applied, I only had one option. Prior to that, you had two or three options. You could take a test for any one of the schools. And so it was either Bronx High School of Science or Brooklyn Tech. And I was always very good with my hands and doing things and technical stuff. So I decided to go to Brooklyn Tech, and I was accepted. And so now from the Bronx, I traveled down to Brooklyn, as I mentioned before, over an hour each way.
So you commuted on the subway?
On the subway, that's right. Yeah. It was noisy.
Yeah. So what was high school like?
Well, I took the electrical broadcast course, and the first thing that I had to do was make up, because I came from junior high school, a year of work, and then select the major in the electrical broadcast. So in the I guess it was the third year, I opted also for the broadcast aspect of it, and I actually. Brooklyn Tech is a huge school that takes almost a whole street, 8 stories high, with elevated swimming pools and you name it.
Oh my God!
And a radio station, WNYE, the New York City educational station, with the tower right on top. And so we learned radio techniques and all that type of stuff, and mixing and recording. And they actually had a component for students from other schools and even elementary schools where they actually put on radio shows. And they wrote radio shows and they dramatized and all of that. And so when I finished, I had passed the second class license and the first class license. So I was a commercial radio operator, first class.
Okay, what does it mean being a commercial
That means
radio
that
operator?
you can control radio stations.
Oh, okay, so you can be the engineering. Yeah.
The engineering aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
Not that well, actually, I also went and worked for a year at Lewitt, which is a vacuum cleaner. Doesn't probably exist any longer. But they were making transceivers, which are transmitter receivers, which they would call, later were called walkie-talkies, and finally now it's a little phone thing in the hole. But these are big boxes, which were, maybe about 40 pounds, and they mounted them either on the trucks or on the backs of the operators. Mm-hmm. And so I was troubleshooter for that, and I did that for a year.
This was after high school, or
after high school?
Yeah,
immediately after high school.
Yeah.
And I also went to City College at night. Mm-hmm. And at the end of, and I got involved with the union, and unfortunately, I was seen as a union person, and I was. But when the election came to have a union or not, I had a bad experience with the fact that the people who were running the union were talking about sabotage, things of that nature. Ooh. And that was my shtick, as I say. Right. So I voted against them. I didn't tell anybody. Yeah. But then when they lost, my head was in a noose, and I was fired.
Well, how did they know it was you? Isn't it a private ballot?
Yes, but they just knew the people who were involved, and I was attending the meetings and doing the things of that nature. Yeah. And so, I was fired. Wow. And just at the time, it was Korean War. So the equipment we were working on was for the Korean War. And I used to joke that, gee, wouldn't it be ironic if I found myself in Korea and it was one of these sets and it didn't work and my stamp was on it as being okay. I mean, well, little did you know.
Oh my God.
But actually I decided I was not going to go in the Army. There's no way. I was 1A, and it was very hard to get a job after that if you're 1A. Right. So I decided, let's get it over with. I decided I'd go into the Navy, and I went to the Navy, and I did very well on the exam, and got to the physical. And
now, when you say 1A, what does that mean?
Draft. Draft. Okay. 1A is draftable.
Okay, so
and then they have.
So you didn't want to wait for the draft.
That's right. That's right.
I hear you.
So, so I passed all of that, and then I got to the last portion of it, which was the physical. And then I thought maybe my eyes would wear glasses, so that was one thing. And I thought my eyes would be a problem. No, that was okay. But I knew I had flat feet. Oh, okay. So I figured, I'll cup my arches and see, And so when the doctor came to me, he says, "Well, relax your foot, relax your foot." He says, "No, they're relax, relax." So he said, "No, you can't be accepted."
So he knew you were trying.
He knew I was flat-footed. Yeah. So I said, "Well, this is ridiculous. They'll take me into the Army." And I go, why not? He says, "Well, you're going to be on a steel ship and all of that, and blah blah blah." Anyway, that was it. Oh. So I decided, well, I just gonna get this over with, and I went the next day to the Army, and I enlisted. And I complained about everything. I told them I had flat feet, and I had this, and I had that. You're in. And that was that.
I guess they weren't as discriminating as the Navy.
No, they needed bodies.
Oh boy.
So I entered and went to basic training. Actually came up here the first initial assignment, but then I went down to Alabama to Camp Rucker, and that was my experience with the South. I mean, thanks to the Army, I got to see a lot, and did basic training there. And although I was commercial radio operator, I got put into the infantry in heavy weapons and as a radio operator. And no matter what I tried, I just I couldn't move out of that. And the whole division was the Minnesota National Guard had been activated, and that became the training unit. So we were there with them. And so I tried to move into the Signal Corps, and there was nothing there. So I did my basic training, and I remember very clearly the cold weather. I mean, this is the South. This is Alabama, and that wind comes across, and it might have been 40 degrees or 50 degrees, but it was cold. And so that
that's really kind of surprising for a northern boy.
That's right.
Complaining about cold weather in Alabama.
Well, you're not dressed for it, and you don't have heated places, So So we did the basic training, and then on the way back, I asked about going to Signal Corps, and they said, "Well, the only thing you can do is get yourself assigned to Signal Corps." So I had leave, and I came back to New York City, and while I was there, I went into the Signal Corps in Fort Monmouth, and I showed them my papers and all that. Mm-hmm. And they said that, we can't change your assignment, but when you get overseas, you should go to the classification officer and show them this, and I'm sure they'll do something for you. Mm-hmm. So we went by train to Seattle, Washington, and from there we flew over to Korea, not to Korea, to Japan and Tokyo. And so I went to the classification officer and I said, "Look, I was at Fort Monmouth, and I said, I should come to you and I should show you this and all that." And so he looked at it and he said, "Well, no, I can't take a chance. I mean, you've been trained in infantry, and so we can't change that. So sorry." And so I wrote home to my dad. I said, "Look, I'm going to Korea. This is, it was 1951. Mm-hmm. And so there I was, and they called out people to go to overseas to Korea, and my name wasn't called. And finally, I guess a day later, my name was called out. And they said, and then when the assignment comes out, I'm stationed in Tokyo at the U.S. Army Stockade as prison guard. Mm-hmm. Talk about strange. I mean, they wouldn't put me in the Signal Corps, but they put me in as an MP. Figure that. So I did that for a while. At the same time, I applied a couple of months later to Officers Candidate School and was selected and sent back overseas. Oh, and selected, and I going to Fort Monmouth as a candidate, and so came back to New York and spent time with my family. But I should really go back and say what happened, which was really central to who I am now, is that in Japan I heard of the Baha'i faith.
Oh, okay.
And I went to meetings there with Japanese, and it's a long story. I cut it short, but anyway, so I heard of the Baha'i faith and basically found that this is what I was looking for. And so when we came back to the States and I went to Fort Monmouth, one of the things that someone had said is that as Baha'is we should ask for not be in a position where you don't have to kill
non-combatants.
Yeah. And so I did, and I went to the office and I told them. They said, "Well, if we can't change that. You'd have to sign a statement saying you're a conscientious objector." And I said, "Well, fine. This is my faith, and I want to be an officer, but I'll sign the form." So I signed it, and that was during the McCarthy era. And so there was this whole communist thing, and very few people had heard the Baha'i faith. So they sent it on to the Pentagon, and then I also met with the commanding general, board of inquiry, a whole bunch of folks, and finally from the Pentagon it came back, said release on lack of motivation, return to point of origin, which in this case was Japan. And so I then returned, and again got stationed in Japan in Sendai with the 24th Division, which is in northern Hokkaido. And from there, I went on temporary duty. I transferred myself. I arranged in the process. I went to the office and I said, look at my records and all that, and why can't it be in a Signal Corps? I said, well, no, we can't do anything, but I'll put it down in pencil. Because they put it in pencil, I was assigned to Signal Corps and assigned as a radio operator and actually a repair team. And so I did that. I was in that, and they sent us on temporary duty to Mount Fuji. So we were there for about 3 months, and I was in charge of a repair team. I was a PFC, and these other guys were PFCs also, but I was in charge. Well,
Wow.
I'll figure that. Anyway, but I realized that no matter how much theory I had, and some experience also at Lewitt, these sets are very complex, and unless you go to school for them and learn exactly it, you're going to do it from the manual, and that was just too much work.
Right.
So I decided that, and I had been a photographer since I was 16, so that was the other thing that was involved here. So I actually went, and I've been shooting for, I had like a camera and all kinds of things. Anyway, so I went to the section, photo section, and I asked whether I could get transferred, and they said, well, let me see what you've done, and I showed them. I said, okay, so you transferred. So I transferred in. So for the last 18 months of my service, I was U.S. Army photographer in the 24th Division.
And what was the total year of service?
I was 3 years and 13 days.
In the Army.
3 years. It was regular enlistment was 3 years. If you were drafted, it was 2 years. Then, they finally shipped us to Korea. And so we were in Busan, and they sent us up to Daegu, which is an air base. And at that point, I actually met a Baha'i who was a master sergeant, and another long story, but anyway. But just about that time, as we were moving north, there was a ceasefire, and that ended the hostilities.
So, how long were you in Korea when that occurred?
I was about 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah. And then we were shipped back. And I came back to the city, New York, and I went back to school, City College, and I majored in film. Because I was interested in photography, and the closest thing to that was a film major. So, and I graduated in 57. Actually, I was City College as a student, and there was a Thanksgiving Day dance, and I had gotten involved with a Planned Parenthood, and at the time we needed and this is Planned Parenthood for Puerto Rico, and so we had Mario Gonzalez was a businessman in New York who had been involved with this, and so as the work developed, we needed more help, and so we had one young woman who was with us, and so when this question came up, she said, well, I think I have a friend who may be interested in coming in as secretary. And so she came, and I fell in love with her. She was just fantastic. So we did very little for Planned Parenthood. So we got married. And we were married in 56. Yeah. And we will celebrate our 50th next year.
Congratulations.
On the 29th of January.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Cool. And then worked at Hunter College for 6 years. I set up the audiovisual department then. And then in 63, my wife and I were asked to go to the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, Israel, and serve the Universal House of Justice, the supreme body of the Baha'i faith. And we went there and returned in 69 to Amherst to attend UMass.
Okay.
And here I was a graduate student. I did graduate work at NYU prior to.
While you were at Hunter College.
While I was at Hunter College, right? And I had a master's from Columbia University from 57 to 60, I guess.
And how did you get that?
That was teachers' college. Once I started to work at Hunter College, I then went on for a master's at Columbia University Teachers College, and graduated there and went on to NYU. And I was there for this is part time, about 2 years, and in a doctorate in communications and education, and then we went overseas.
So your doctorate studies were interrupted to go to the Baha'i World Center.
Exactly. And we came here. I already had a master's, so I was an instructor in the School of Education and a doctoral student at the same time, and finished my work in about 2.5 years, and became an assistant professor, and did that work for another 4 years, I guess it was. And then I switched over to the admissions office, undergraduate admissions office, and served there for another 20 years as retiring as an associate director, actually interim director also.
In the admissions office?
In the admissions office, undergraduate admissions,
Okay.
I was all during this time, I was also an adjunct professor in the School of Education.
I asked Juan how he ran into the Baha'i faith.
Well, I was at the U.S. Army Stockade as a prison guard.
This was in Japan, right?
In Japan, yeah. The things had become difficult in Korea, and that's when the Chinese troops had come down and pushed the Allies to Busan. And so then the complement of the stockade was reduced, and these folks were sent overseas. And so I was assigned, I had been in charge of documenting or mugging the prisoners as they came in. All these prisoners were American, so it's a GI. It was not foreign prisoners. These are all...
Okay, GIs that got in trouble in some way or another.
Yes, a whole range of things. And so I was then assigned to the actual prison guard within the prison. And one of the things that took place was that you had shifts of about 8 hours. And during that time, you were assigned to various. You could be in the prison itself. You could be a prison guard on top of the wall. This was a Japanese prison taken over by the U.S. Army. And so it was a regular prison, as you would think of prisons, with a wall, a 26-foot wall around the prison, locks, and all the rest of the stuff that goes with that. And so I found myself on the wall doing night duty, and then I had time to think, because all you do is just watch. There's floodlights shining, or if it's during the night or in the day, it's the sunshine and all that. So you just look, and the chance of getting out of that place was impossible. And I thought about a lot of things. I thought about all my life and experiences and various things. And I had come to religion. And I grew up, my uncle was a Lutheran minister. We were Lutherans. But I didn't really practice very much. I didn't go to church and any of these things. And I had the New York City religion, which is basically you turn on the radio on Sunday, you hear a sermon of some sort, and that's about it. But attending church is not my thing. And so, but I decided that I believe in God. That was one of the first things I did. And that
now, how did that happen?
Well, just from my exposure to people in the city, and all these various. The basic was with Jewish and Christian. I didn't have any contact with Muslims, but the thing that I noticed about the various either religions or sub-units of them was that they were good and even bad or not so good from people. They were just a range. And so therefore they were good and bad everywhere. And the thing that I was really interested in was that what was the relationship between all these religions? I mean, why the various religions? And so that was a question that was in my mind. But I concluded, one, that I did believe in God, whatever God it was. And two, that I wanted to belong to some group. And until I could find that, I'd guide myself by the Ten Commandments. Well, about a week later, after I concluded this, I'm in the barbershop and I had my hair cut. And it's the first time I ever had my hair cut by a woman. And it turned out that there was a Japanese barber who lived in Yokohama, and his daughter worked with him. And as I was seated there, the Japanese barber was talking to a GI. And the GI was saying that he had a ring that he wanted refaced, and it was chipped and something happened. And that it was Baha'i, and I never heard about Baha'i. And so, but one thing I did know about him, he had been pointed out to me that he was different, and he was from the West Coast. And I said, West Coast, different? Must be some kooky religion. I mean, anyway, so we're getting up. I get up, and we're leaving at the same time. So I'm putting my jacket on. I asked him, what is Baha'i? What do Baha'is believe in? He said, Baha'is believe in this and this. And I said, well, I believe in that. I believe in that. Never thought about that, but I have nothing against that. And so I said, well, do you have anything to read? And he said, sure, I'll get you a book. And he did. He got me a book known as Bahá'í New Era by Samari. And that night I was on duty and I read by the searchlight. And then I came across Progressive Revelation, which explains this difference that takes place. It's a natural development, like stages of school, and that God sends a messenger to mankind according to its needs. And so that, to me, it made a clear explanation. And so I asked him whether I could, whether there were any activities in the area. He said, yes, there are meetings that take place, and I'd be glad to take you. And so we went, and I met people there. And then shortly after that is when I got my assignment to return to go to Officers Candidate School. So when we got back to the city, to New York, I had time. I spent 15 days with my family and 15 days with the Baha'is, and at that time I enrolled into the Baha'i community, and went then to back to the Fort Monmouth and my training, and that's when I already explained that I selected the non-combatant duty, and all of that was sent back overseas. So that's where I heard of it in Japan.
Okay. Yeah. Now you told me that there was a story behind the staff sergeant in Korea.
Yes. Well, the staff sergeant in Korea, when I said we got back to Korea, and that's where my last assignment in Daegu. I was notified by the Baha'is that there was a Baha'i in Daegu, and I made arrangements to go and see him. And so we celebrated what is known as a feast. It's a gathering, a celebration every 19 days of the 19 days of 19 months. 19 months and 19 days. And so we had a feast there. There's two of us, and prayers, things of that nature. Well, some 10 years later, it turns out that we meet again in Haifa at the Baha'i World Center, where I mentioned before my wife and I had gone, 63 to 69, and his wife and he were there. And we hadn't seen ourselves in 10 years, nor had any contact. And all of a sudden, we're in the same place. It was really interesting. Really interesting. Cool. He's Kirby Kent was his name. Yeah. Really nice guy.
Yeah.
I asked Juan what he did at the Baha'i World Center in Haifa, Israel.
Actually, the main reason that we were there was that when the Supreme Body was elected, the request was made by the National Spiritual Assemblies of Latin America that they be able to communicate or correspond in Spanish. Well, that was fine, but they needed someone to translate. So our name was suggested, and we said yes, and so we went. So Bradley was a Spanish translator. I can do rough translation, but she actually was born in Puerto Rico and educated there and went to college. But she had a double major with Spanish as well. And so it was that was the main work. But then there was so much more to do. So whenever there was something there, I was the only young person, relatively speaking, who was able to do it. I was the official photographer. It turned out because I had gone to Brooklyn Tech, I had technical background, so that was good. And I was a U.S. Army photographer and also a photographer when I was 16, and that was another thing. I was also in charge of maintenance of the holy places. I drove the pilgrim bus. I was in charge of rental properties there at the time. Took care of the mail. Let's see what else. Well, I wore actually. Braulio had my wife had calculated that I wore 21 different hats at a time, not at the same time, but over the different tasks that I had. So it was a busy time. And our son was born there, and our daughter was conceived there. Born in
That's cool.
So it was quite an experience, and it was the beginning of a developmental stage in the Baha'i faith. And so at the beginning of everything, and there was lots to do and a few people to do it. And so it was a very good experience. It was an exciting time.
I asked Juan what got him interested in education.
Education was always something that interested me.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I was a fantastic student, but I was educated. And I remember very clearly, I'm a bad speller. That shows, so there must be some correlation with something else. But anyway,
I usually correlate it to intelligence.
It's
inversely proportional. The worse speller you are, the more intelligent you are.
Right. Well, I probably agree with that. But anyway, it was, and I remember I would have liked to have taught, but I being bad speller right on board, and that just didn't, anyway. So that was sort of out of the picture until I ended up in my graduate studies here, and found out that you don't have to be at the blackboard. You can prepare things. It's a whole different world, and spelling is not the critical thing. So it was exciting. I was really thrilled to be able to teach at the university, and and working with kids, and lots of things happened in the world.
Juan describes his involvement of the beginning of bilingual education in Massachusetts.
Exciting times. We were involved with the bilingual education in the state of Massachusetts. In 1972, the bill was passed, and I was then on the faculty. And so we had a number of students who had Ford Foundation scholarships to study with the doctorates here. One was Henry Casso, who was a former priest, very, very eloquent person. And he became interested in this, and together we actually were involved with the bilingual education. And I did a slide program for them and a number of things. And in coming up with a term for what it sort of motto, I suggested a two-way communication, two-way education. And so that became the motto that was used, and it was very active. Things have changed a little bit since then, but there was an exciting time, and the education program was developed at the School of Education for this, and a lot of things were developed. So that was really an exciting aspect of being at the university during that time.
I asked Juan what got him interested in film.
Well, the one thing I studied film, which was at the time when I was studying documentary film. There are very few places where you study that. And when I was asked, what are you studying? I said film. And they look at me with this blank look. You say, what? And today you say film, and the eyes open. Oh, that's wonderful.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Photography was the same thing. I actually, when I was going to college, and before I got into film, I wanted to study photography. And the only place that had a program was the University of Texas, and I wasn't about to go to Texas. So I was at City College in a transfer program, and that was a transfer to Rochester Institute of Technology. And because there they had, in the physics program, some photography courses, in the optics side.
Okay.
And so that's what I was doing before I went into the service. And then when I came out, I came back again to sort of follow the same route and discovered that City College had a film institute. And I said, wow, that's a different thing. It's a motion moving picture, and the other is still pictures, And so I studied film, but realized that it's a tough field. It's a tough field. I'm glad I studied it, like many things that people do, and it's good background. But actually working in the field is something else.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I
asked Juan what attracted him to the Baha'i faith.
That what the Baha'i faith did for me was, as I mentioned, the basic concept of progressive revelation, but also the concept of one God. That I was clear about. But how could you have these various religions and the same God? It just didn't make much sense. And then the people, that this range of people. So when you look at the Baha'i faith, it talks about the oneness of God, the oneness of humanity, and the oneness of religion. Religion as the various stages in development, as if you're going to in education, in schooling, from the elementary to junior high school, college, and more advanced studies. So that's the same thing as we have as a concept. So that all makes sense. It's easy to understand. Plus, it's inclusive. That's very critical, because if in many situations you have, we're okay, you're not okay because you're not one of us. And that's not the attitude among the Baha'is. And so the inclusiveness and also the vision of the future. that we are moving to a one world, that we are interdependent, that we are one people. I mean, we're all cousins. We're all one family. It's been proven before. It was as a concept, something that the Baha'i said. And now the science says it. It's proven. So that's very reinforcing and very supportive. So I think that's what I've gotten out of it. And it means that wherever I go, I feel comfortable. With whomever I deal, I feel comfortable. And then the teachings themselves give us guidance and there's expectations that you work toward these things. It's not easy, but it is rewarding. And I think that's the important thing.
Now that Juan's retired, I asked him what he's been doing.
I retired in 2000. Believe it or not, when you retire, you don't have any more time. It's still 24 hours a day. And so it's just what you do with those 24 hours. Well, with the various interests that I have in technology, in film, photography, computers, and I also quite active in my community. And so all of those things together fill up my time. And I just don't have enough hours to do all the things that I would like to do and think of doing. And now we also have a house, so I do some repairs, and I just finished shoveling the snow. So, there's always something to do.
Very good. Well, Juan, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time out.
My pleasure. Yeah.
I hope you enjoyed that interview with Dr. Juan Caban, a Baha'i who lives in Amherst, Massachusetts, who studied film, got a master's in audiovisual instruction at Columbia University, and his PhD in educational technology at UMass. He was the associate director of undergraduate admissions at UMass for 20 years. If you want information on the Baha'i faith specifically, you can go to the website www.baha'i.org. That's BAHAI.org. Or you can call the toll-free number 1-800-22-UNITE.